Hi, welcome to Scratching the Surface. My name is Patrick Vaughn. I am a Presbyterian minister, and my colleague is.
Terrell Carter. I am a professor for Central Seminary, and I am a Baptist pastor.
In this series of conversations, we are lifting up racial issues in our country today. These are unscripted, unrehearsed conversations. We will see where they lead. Terrell, last time, we talked about Colin Kaepernick, and we got some feedback on that. But as I was thinking about him, I was reminded of the other quarterback, Doug Williams, who played exceptionally well for the Washington Redskins back in the 70s, maybe early 80s. And yet what I remember about him, and I think this is correct, what I remember is hearing people say, well, he can't play quarterback. He's black. He's not smart enough to play that position. Do you remember any of that?
I do remember that. I was a fan of Doug Williams because he was one of the few black quarterbacks in the NFL. And he was the first black quarterback in the NFL to go to the Super Bowl. So I'm very familiar with Doug Williams.
And he won the Super Bowl.
He did, and it was a surprise to everyone because people did not anticipate him being able to manage the process of playing at such a high level. I remember in the time leading up to the Super Bowl game, obviously the question was, can Doug Williams succeed because he was a black quarterback? And I remember seeing an interview while Doug was in the locker room, and a reporter walked up to him and asked him, so how long have you been a black quarterback? And it's like, wow, that is obviously the main thing that is going on, not how do you plan on, and I forget who they played against in that Super Bowl, but it wasn't, how are you preparing physically? How are you preparing mentally? The first question was, how does it feel, or how long have you been a black quarterback?
What an insightful question that was.
Right.
So helpful to everyone.
Well, and it's you could see on Doug Williams' face when he was asked the question, he was clearly perturbed. I'm going to use that word. He was clearly perturbed, and he knew, and you could tell that he almost felt disrespected in a way to be asked that question. But the goofy thing is it seemed like a normal question for that reporter, or it obviously was a normal question for that reporter and for other reporters because no one called him out about it. He asked the question, Doug answered pretty quickly, and then it was like, that's how it goes.
So that question leads me to wonder, how do we see people? And how is racism connected with the way we perceive other people? So sometimes quarterbacks, they're supposed to be the white guy, the smart guy, the guy who can read defenses. The running backs and the quarterbacks, they'll be the black guys because they can run really fast.
Well,
and that's pretty stereotypical. That's not quite fair.
You're right. I'm a big fan of football. I know I said that last time, but when you listen to sports commentators, and this is just one example, when you listen to sports commentators, they describe white players from a cerebral and intellectual standpoint, and they describe black players from the physical attributes that they have. So if you talk about a white quarterback, let's take two quarterbacks that are currently playing right now. Let's take the black quarterback from the Carolina Panthers and the white quarterback from the Indianapolis Colts. The white quarterback from the Indianapolis Colts gets described as being a smart player, an intelligent player who can read defenses and do all of those things. But the black quarterback from Carolina Panthers, which was the MVP last year, Cam Newton, he's described, according to his physical attributes, he's bigger than everyone, or he's as big as a linebacker and can run fast. It's not that he can read defenses. It's not that he can analyze a play. He has the physical attributes that are necessary, while the white quarterback has the intellectual attributes. I think about a sketch that was done by Key and Peele before they ended their show. Key and Peele is a comedy series that was on Comedy Central.
Great show.
Right, very, very great show. They pushed multiple buttons. But in a particular episode, they had two black commentators with a white commentator talking about sports athletes. And the white commentator consistently described all of the white athletes according to their intellectual prowess. But anytime he described a black player, it was because this man was strong because this man was, 6'5", 300 pounds, or it was always about the physical description of who that person was and what they could do, and never the intellectual. And the black commentators, Key and Peele, again in the comedy sketch, called him on it, and essentially the white commentator was like, "Hey, that's the way the world sees him."
So, at least on one level, racism is the way we see people.
Yes.
The glasses we put on and the way we see people. And these glasses have been shaped or focused according to our past experiences, what we have heard, what we have seen growing up. What other factors do you think?
Oh, I think those are two of the main factors. Again, your nature and your nurture. Number one, you and I are both men of faith, and we believe in the idea of sin, that we are imperfect humans, and you don't have to be a person of faith just to believe that people are inhuman. People are human and imperfect, excuse me. So we are all imperfect. We are all suspect to whatever. But we also believe that there is something within us that, that causes us not to treat each other fairly, equally. But in addition to that, we also are raised in very particular ways, and that goes both ways. That goes, I love my grandfather dearly. My grandfather is the most important man in my life, but my grandfather was not treated fairly or well growing up as a black man in southern Missouri. And he let me and my twin brother know that white people were not necessarily to be trusted. So my other grandfather, who grew up in southern area as well, both of them grew up in a time where, in the Jim Crow era, in times where they were not considered to be equal, and they raised us to not necessarily trust white people because white people were about power and about keeping black people down. Now, I know that's not true. Not all white people are like that. But my point is that you can be taught whatever on either side, whether you're black or whether you're white.
And that goes really deep and shapes the way we see the world. So I grew up in a small town in the South. I think my high school had about 400 students and 35% black, the rest white. Got along for the most part. Great friends. But I had some experiences along the way in which I was very small, very short, very, very skinny. I was still as good looking then as I am now, but and I was picked on, and bullied primarily by my African American classmates. So I grew up not only hearing the other baggage, the garbage in the background, but because of those personal experiences, so black people, whoa. Is this person going to hurt me?
Right.
Am I going to be put down again? And it took me years to be able to see that and claim that. And I'm still on the journey. I haven't arrived. It's something I'd like to share with you. I don't know if we've ever talked about this before, but I just remembered that one of the things that helped me to begin to own and see my own racism was when I was working as a hospital chaplain. And their color didn't matter. People were just hurting. I remember one evening, a man was brought in, an African American man. He had fallen off the back of a truck. Brought in, the doctors tried to save him. They couldn't. And my responsibility as a chaplain was to escort the family back to the room so they could spend time with him. As we went back, as soon as the mother saw him, she fainted and hit the floor. As soon as the aunt saw him, she fainted and hit the floor. And I was 24 years old. I had no idea what was going on, scared to death. There was an African American orderly who saw what was going on, and he came over. And he just got down on his knees and held their hands and said, "I'm with you. It's going to be okay. I'm with you. It's going to be okay." And that just really stands out in my mind as a pivotal moment. Perhaps there were many, but it helped me begin to say, oh my gosh, it's not about race. It's about people hurting. But I had to get into a situation where I was exposed and engaged and around that kind of pain to have my own eyes opened.
Well, I think that's part of the problem that we face nowadays is we have let. I applaud that, and I don't say that in a condescending way. You allowed yourself to be put into circumstances where you had to interact with people who were different from you, and I think that we don't do that nowadays. I mean, surveys show, and not to start bringing up a bunch of data points, but we talk. Someone asked a question, essentially. So where do we get our information from? You know, if you get your information from Fox News, then all you believe is what Fox News says, and you don't realize that there's CNN or everything that CNN says is liberal. Or if you only listen to CNN and don't get information from Fox News, and you think that it's in that the same thing is true in our personal lives. I'm part of a Baptist board website, and I am one of the few black people that are part of the board. And I'm probably one of the few moderates who are a part of the board as well. Someone posted something about the North Carolina shooting, and essentially it said that black people are savages. This is what's really going on in America. And I usually don't contribute to the board. I usually let things fly and just sit back and listen. But I had to get involved in that conversation. I was like, wait a minute, what are you implying that all black people are that way? Well, when you look at such and such, and my response was essentially, okay, is that all you ever get your information about black people? It's from that particular place? Or are you only influenced by this one or two negative experiences that you've had with African Americans? There's an entirely different world of black people out there, number one. But number two, this is a Christian board that's supposed to be about God's love, God's forgiveness, and God's redemption. And you were saying that essentially an entire race of people, an entire group of people, nationality of people is irredeemable. Again, it's because they get their information and they get their influence from one place and one place only.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. I can talk with someone about 3 minutes, and I can tell if they watch CNN or Fox News.
Yeah.
It's amazing. What's stirring within me, Terrell, as we talk, though, is that confronting racism is not simply an intellectual issue. We can't read a book about it. We can't hear a lecture about it. I remember in my very early naive days as a pastor, I did a sermon one morning on racism, and it's wrong. Get over it. And I thought, that took care of that. We can move on beyond racism now. And then I heard that night from one of the sweetest women I've ever known make a comment that reflected a perception of black people that was very, very, very low. And I remember feeling just sad in hearing that. How do we help people come together then and to interact so that they can hear one another, see one another? How do we do that in a time when I've read, for example, we used to have front porches. Now we've got back decks. And we don't walk around, even our own neighborhoods. And as our neighborhoods are becoming more and more separate, sort of getting into silos, what do we do? I really don't know.
It's not an easy process, and it really is not a quick process either. You know this, I know this, and most people probably will acknowledge this, that this has been going on for such a long time that it's going to take a long time just to make a dent in what's going on. One of the things I recommend to churches when I go speak to churches, so I've been invited to speak in multiple historically white churches to help them understand or to be exposed to a different perspective. One of the things I always challenge them to do is don't ask people to come to you, go to where other people are. So whoever it is you are trying to understand, whoever it is you're trying to learn more about, whether it's black people, Latina people, Korean, whatever nationality we want to say, don't ask them to come to you. Be willing to go to them, or at least to meet them halfway. Because if you want to learn more about other people, but you ask them to come to you, then you are staying in a position of power, and they are staying in a position of subservience to you. So leave your place of comfort and go to wherever it is they are, or meet them somewhere else. It's as simple as if you live in a town that has any amount of diversity, go and share a service. Go share a meal with another person. So I'm talking on an individual level or on a group level. Go and share a meal with somebody and just say, hey, this is going to sound stupid, but I want to be honest with you. I don't understand. This is what's happening in our society right now. And I'm trying to get a better understanding of it from a different perspective. That's a non-threatening, you're not required to do an awful lot other than to sit and be quiet and listen to someone else. But take the first step and invite someone else to share a meal, to share a cup of coffee, to share a donut, whatever it is you do, a glass of tea on an individual level, but on a larger level, invite another group. Maybe if you are, for your church, you serve in pastoral leadership, take a group of your pastoral leaders and meet with the pastoral leaders at another church. Or, I think that's the simplest first step. It's go, don't ask people to come, but you go and listen. And then don't let that be the last time that you talk. Make it the first time and figure out a way to do it on a regular or semi-regular basis. So that's the easiest step.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Terrell, we call this scratching the surface because we really can't go very deep into these very complex issues. And as I looked at the clock, our time is up already. That flew by. I've really enjoyed it.
I have as well. And my hope, my prayer is that people will start talking together, not talking at each other, but talking with one another. Yes. And listening.
And if you're watching this video, you've got questions for us, you'll see our email addresses. Please write to us, write to Terrell, write to me. If you have questions, if there's something you agree with, if there's something you really don't agree with, we want to know about it. And we will bring that into our conversation. This has been Scratching the Surface. I'm Patrick Vaughn, and I've been joined by
Terrell Carter.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.